Hello and welcome to the series Thinking Unbound. I'm Anand Patel and today I'm joined by Kennet, Otto and Georgy Matov from WTW's consulting practice. Welcome. As two of WTW's cyber experts, I'm interested to hear about your insights and your views on the cyber insurance market within Europe. It would appear that Europe is relatively slow in terms of the development of cyber insurance, yet it is a feature of critical importance to national economies and the resilience, as well as developing the skills and the adequacy to be able to administer a very high profile and emerging risk. Why do you think that Europe has been slow in terms of the progress of developing a cyber insurance market?
So let me first say, I wouldn't call it slow, and let me disagree a little bit with that. First of all, there are geographies in Europe where we can see a growth of 50% each year. So I wouldn't call that slow. The other thing is there are a lot of new players in the market, as well in France, for example, or in Germany. Startups, but also bigger ones who really come into the market, and we can see more and more of that. So it's a growing market, strongly growing market. That's the one thing. And the other is, I would say the insurance market follows a little bit the risk situation. So it all started with the very big risks, right? And now the mid-sized companies and small companies are more and more attacked. And of course, this is the reason why they seek or need cyber insurance. And that's a development which is really, which is very positive for the insurance market. And so I would say it's a developing market and it's a grown-up market. So they just started a little bit later. And I would not call that slow, if you like.
Perhaps if I can add a couple of perspectives from my end, I would agree with Kennet. Yes, cyber first emerged as a risk which grabbing headlines in the US, then kind of moved across the pond and became a prominent feature in the London market, whereby a lot of international business originating predominantly in the US was placed. But now increasingly London market players looking for growth and opportunities on the continent through delegated authority business, facilities and so on and so forth, reflecting the fact that continental Europe is starting to play a catch-up in a major way. And as Kennet suggested, some of the major markets like Germany and France are offering very exciting opportunities, but it's not just that. There are other markets in Southern Europe and in Northern Europe where the awareness around cyber risk is increasing, and as a result of this, there is recognition that cyber coverage is an important hygiene factor for successful economic growth.
Maybe to add two things at the moment, which is really driving the business in a very strong manner. These are two sports events. So the one is in Germany. Currently, we have the football, European football games, and then we have the Olympic Games in France. And both events are really important. Why that? If you look at the former events, it was something about 500,000 attacks only for one larger event. And the idea is that the Olympic Games in France will even attract more attacks, right? So something about 1 million or something. If you look at this development, I'm quite sure that the growth will continue, and everyone who is looking at the cyber market will see that there are a lot of opportunities, and that is something. Coming again back to this slowness of the cyber market, I wouldn't call it slow. It's just evolving, and it's a lot of opportunities for the insurance market.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting point in terms of those big headline sporting events almost galvanizing the cyber insurance market and getting it to act. And I think earlier on you mentioned the proliferation or the large increase in the number of startups and the offerings in that space. Do you think there's something, a risk aversion from European insurers in the space of cyber? We were obviously aware that, there's big systemic potential. It's difficult to quantify. It's difficult to get your hands around. Do you think European insurers are approaching cyber risk differently, perhaps to the US market, which was the lead market? Are they particularly scared of cyber insurance?
Again, the word scared is probably, from my perspective, not the right one. I would say there's a certain prudence in how to manage cyber insurance. If you look at the official numbers from the German market, to give an example, alone from 21 to 22, the retention went down. So cyber insurance, primary insurance companies bought more and more reinsurance. So good sign for the reinsurance market. And I think we can observe that cyber insurance companies are very careful, and that's good. And then there is another thing where I'm absolutely convinced, and that's becoming more and more true in the market, that is cyber insurance belongs in the hands of experts. And this is something which also shows you have to be careful if you don't follow certain rules that are mandatory. And so I would say the whole cyber market is, as I said before, is grown up, but is developing more and more. And being careful in this very rapidly changing risk landscape is more than positive. Cyber insurers in Europe are not afraid of cyber, but are making smaller steps, and that's good. And if the retention shows a very careful approach, that's very, very good. And I think that's the way how profitable business can be done in cyber. It is not like going into the market and trying to get every risk. There are risks you cannot sign. I think this is more or less common knowledge now in the market, that there are really parts which have to find other solutions. And if you have this approach, I think you can be very profitable, and how the attitude is in Europe, and especially in the big markets in Europe.
So thank you very much for joining us today. And to the viewers, please join us next time for the next in the series, Thinking Unbound.